Guest is Susan Masterson, the Meade County Clerk, and we're going to welcome her in, and we're going to talk a little bit about the election, the upcoming primary election, which is May 16th. We're going to talk a little bit about what to expect when you get in there and things like that. So if you want to call in, our number is 270-945-3418. We are live here with you. We'll put you on the air. In the meantime, we're going to welcome Susan into the
Thank you.
program. So let's see. Oh, I'm here. I am. I gotta remember I'm driving. There we go. Hi. So okay, Susan. So why don't you take us in? Just tell us how your first your first quarter as county clerk's been going.
Busy, very busy, but it's been good. I've enjoyed it a lot. I have to say I love my job, and I've loved all the challenges, and I think it's gone very well so far. The election, the primary, getting prepared for that is a big deal, and I think I've done really well so far. I've got all my deadlines. I'm on schedule.
That's always good.
Yep. Everything's been going really good.
Now, we talked a little bit before we came on, but are there any were there any big changes for you as far as the election process and setting up? I know you've done this before,
Right.
Because you were the chief deputy before, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what is there any changes or anything like that?
I do have to say, I've always had knowledge of the elections, and been there for late nights of closing the election nights, and of course working the elections in the office, answering phone calls and all that. But I do have to say too that last year, since I was on the ballot, I did not get to participate in any of the election process.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. And then the year before that, there wasn't an election. So there was, and then
so all the changes over the last 3 years have kind of hit you all at once.
Yes.
In this early election, this primary season. So
Yes.
So do you have, or can you tell us where the polls are going to be set up for this year? Are they the same as they have been? What's different about where the locations?
So we'll have our same. We'll have the same locations at Flaherty, Ekron, Painville, the high school, Muldrow, and our new location will be the Stewart Pepper Middle School. So I took out our voting center is the high school, which also includes the regular precincts that we had there in the past, which was Sirocco Midway. I have to look at my list.
Brandenburg East,
yes.
I think Brandenburg East and Brandenburg West were
and
out
we
there,
had
right?
yes, and we had combined that. We had combined Doe Valley, Rockhaven, Weldon, Doe Run, and Ashcraft. They were all at the high school.
Right.
So in the general election, well, in the whole election last year, it was just a big election. And the high school, I think, was a little overwhelmed because it's.
I remember the long lines.
Yes, because it was a voting center. Plus, you had these precincts or these certain precincts that had to vote there.
Mm-hmm.
So I did take out Doe Valley, Rockhaven, Weldon, Doe Run, and Ashcraft, and we're moving them to the middle school.
Now that's where they used to be, if I remember right.
Yes.
So
yes. So they will be. They can vote at the Stewart Pepper Middle School now.
So anybody can vote at the high school as a voting center.
Yes.
But those traditional middle school precincts, Ashcraft, Doe
Run, and Doe Valley and Rockhaven.
Yes, so those are going back to the middle school.
Yes.
So if you vote in one of those locations, or if you vote in one of those precincts, now you can go to the middle school and vote. Or if it's more convenient, you can still go over to the high school.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then the other ones out there, Flaherty. So what's over in Flaherty?
Flaherty has Grayhampton, Flaherty, Woodland, Otter Creek, and Garrett.
And then Ekron is Ekron and what else?
Buck Grove, Ekron, and hold on, sorry.
Just one more.
Ekron, Buck Grove.
Guston? Is it Guston?
No. Oh yeah, Guston. Sorry.
Guston
Yes,
isn't-
Guston.
okay,
I
cool.
was looking for Guston. Yeah. Guston.
So,
yes.
okay, good. So let's see. Did we miss one? Or that's it, right? There's
That should be
Flaherty.
it. Ekron.
Oh, Paineville's got.
Oh, Paineville.
Oh, Paineville does too. Yeah.
Yeah, Paineville has
Battletown, Wolf
Battletown,
Creek.
Wolf Creek, Concordia, Paineville. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So, so we can tell, so everybody that's out there, you can have, so you can still go vote at your regular precinct. And this is back to the traditional precincts where we were before. Or you can still, as of last year, just like last year, you can go vote at the high school, and no matter what precinct you're in, as long as it's Meade County, right? So.
Right. Yes.
So what allows us to do this voting center? What changed over the last couple of years that allowed that to happen for us?
The state made that, and it's a choice, I guess.
Is there but technology wise, what is it the ebook that
the
really kind of
books we can and even like the other locations, they're considered consolidated locations because our EPO books. We program those to, like our clerks will have these EPO books that you're not walking into the school and having to go over here to Sirocco Midway. You're not having to go. They're programmed to take in all the precincts. And that's where it all started, I think, was with the EPO books.
So the EPO book,
like the clerks, like we'll have, I should have brought my,
let's just talk about what the EPO book is to make sure everybody understands. So last year we went in, they had a device there, looked like a tablet of some sort,
right.
and they scanned the back of my license. And when they scanned the back of my license, it looked me up and found me in the book.
Yes.
And this was I went to the high school last year because I'm in Ashcraft, so that's where we had to vote. And it looked me up, found me, and then they had to write down what my precinct was, so they knew what ballot to give me. Right, my precinct. Well, during the general election, it was just one ballot, but for my precinct. But so I had to go over and get a ballot that was made for my precinct, so it had all of my. So like we voted for magistrate and things like that. So
Right.
I had to have my magistrate election in there.
Yes.
The county-wides, and then we had some other school board, I think, was on there, things like that. So, so the ebook allows you to vote or to look up really quick, but it also says
It tells what, like your precinct. And so last year, like the clerks had to write down the precinct on a piece of paper, or your ballot style, like your A101 or whatever, whatever your precinct was, and
Right.
then they would take it over to the table and
they would pick
pull,
out-
they would pull out your ballot.
so. This year, I think you said earlier that it's going to actually print.
Yes,
That-
we have
that receipt.
new EPO books this year that will actually print a receipt that has your ballot style, like your precinct, or your party as far as in the primary, I guess. And then they would take it over to the table, and the judges would give you your ballot.
So
I'd like to clarify real quickly for everybody out there listening that everybody doesn't get the same ballot. Some people will have, it depends on the district that you're in, because you'll have a different ballot, your different magisterial candidates, different, it could be judicial candidates. I don't know, they're probably countywide, but the
And it
bottom
depends
line-
on which election we're doing, too.
Yes,
Like, 'cause,
exactly.
like, this election is,
This is for Republicans,
Right.
for Democrats, yes, exactly.
we don't have a
yeah, that's a little bit confusing. I'm glad you brought that up because we've had people say, well, in the past they thought they were Democrat and they showed up to vote in a Republican primary. For years they never noticed it, and then they showed up, because they would just get in, get a ballot, and move on. Now it's like people are paying attention more now to what they're registered as. And so, and I remember that only Republicans can choose a Republican nominee, and a Democrat can vote. And only Democrats can vote for Democrat nominees. We're talking about
In the primary.
who's going in the primary.
Right, in the
So May 16th, Republicans are choosing Republican candidates, And so we're going to be choosing for governor. These are the statewide races. So we're going to have governor. We're going to have Secretary of State, Attorney General, and
I have a sample ballot.
treasurer, auditor, things like that, as well as there's probably a handful of others that but it's basically those main statewide races, right? So
Yeah.
so I see you have a sample ballot there. So and so
Cheat.
so when we so if we can kind of go to what the the eligibility. So we say Republicans vote Republicans and Democrats vote Democrats. But what if you changed your registration? Let's say I changed my registration on from Democrat to Republican in January.
You would not be eligible to vote in the primary.
So you're not eligible to vote
For either one.
Right.
for either one.
Right.
So you can't vote in the original. You can't vote in your new party. You're still eligible for the general,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter really what you're registered in for the general, but your registration only matters during the primary.
And we try to explain that to people when they come in and want to change their party after the deadline. We explain it to them thoroughly. We're like, just to let you know, if you change your party now, you're not going to be able to vote in the primary.
For either party.
Right. At all.
Yeah.
But you can still vote in the general, and then we leave it up to them. It's their choice. Like, if you want to, that's great. It's your choice. But we want to let them know because we don't want them to think, they change their party and then they try to go vote in the primary and they can't.
The bat phone.
So we try to make them aware of that when they come in and do change their party.
So sorry about that. I had a call from my niece real quick. I don't know why she's calling me. Oops, let me go back to my camera. So the reason I was asking is there's one other aspect of the registration is if you're a new registrant, you can vote. You can vote in the primary up until the deadline was the 17th of April. Right. It's about 30 days out.
Right.
If I remember right.
Yes.
So that deadline just happened. Earlier this week. So I think it was Monday or Tuesday. And so basically registration is closed until after the primary election at this point. What does it usually open up about June 1st time frame to go?
It's
ish.
Right. Yeah.
It's a couple weeks after the election, right?
Yeah.
And so, but some people may not have realized, and we've talked about it on the show before, that you can actually, if you are a new registration, if you are going to be 18 on or before the general election in November. So I think we're looking at November 7th this year for the general election. If you're going to be 18 on or before that day, you could have changed. You could have registered as a new registration for the primary and voted in the primary, even if you were 17. We have a couple of folks that happened to. One is she just became the youth captain, and I didn't tell her I was going to put her name out there, so I'm not going to mention her name. Yeah. But she's the new youth captain for Doe Valley, but she's only 17 still, right? But the rules in the Republican Party are if you, as long as if you're a registered voter, and then for youth chair or for youth captain, you can be a registered voter under 40 years of age. You can be a youth captain. So we had an opening, and we were able to vote her in, and it's really cool to see young people care about these things.
Did you see where I had I had posters made to put up in the high school?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. As a matter of fact, the young lady we're talking about, she saw them, and I think she was.
I was hoping that I wanted to hear from somebody that actually saw the posters.
Yeah.
But I put those up. I took them. I talked to the school board or the principal and asked permission first, of course, to put the posters up that stated that if you were 17 before the November election, and there's a QR code on there that they could just, hit that
go
QR
to the
code,
state,
and it goes automatically
website.
Would go to their website and register them to vote.
That's awesome.
So that was to help, hopefully, get youth.
Digital generation, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's convenient. Now I noticed that sometimes on the data when the data is a little strange coming from when you register through the app. It's a little different than if you sign the card.
Right. Yeah.
Like birth dates, all seem to all have January 1st as the birth date. No matter the year is correct,
Yeah.
but the birth date is always January 1st. So you don't know exactly when someone's birthday is if they register through the app. But if they register with the card, it's their exact birth date. It's really kind of a strange thing to see, but it took me a little bit to figure out there's an awful lot of people born on January 1st. It's kind of a neat little thing that happens, I guess. It doesn't really affect us any. It's just an anomaly that we catch in our data when we're doing data analysis. But so one of the other things that I was thinking about is so we have I lost my train of thought. So we go in. We talked about locations. We talked about what about if we changed. We talked about new registrations. I was going to say about new registrations is I was going to ask you. You said you put posters in the high school, but when we were in school, the county clerk actually came to the school.
Did voter drives
Did voter drives? Yeah.
I thought about doing that.
Okay, but you didn't do it this year.
No,
but
right. This all came about like kind of quick, and I was one of the county clerks at one of our meetings, our monthly meetings, had mentioned those posters, and that she sent us all an example of her poster, and I thought, well, that's a good idea for, to get the youth. I think that it was easy access for them to see a QR code and actually be able to.
Yeah, well, they know what it is.
Yeah. And so I thought that.
My mom and dad know what it is.
Yeah.
My mom and dad know what they are, but
Yeah.
to ask them to actually use one sometimes is a little bit different. So,
yeah. But I actually have thought about like a voter drive kind of thing at the schools, like they used to do.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, it's not just hey, let's get people registered, but it's also a moment to educate on that, and I think it's important that we talk about why. I think it's important that we talk about why it's important, why it's important to vote, why it's important to register. A lot of kids don't understand that there's a power and there's responsibility behind the vote. And I know that's, I know this day, a lot of people are worried about, are we, are the elections rigged? And we hear that a lot in the news and things, but I think that, I think we do it really well in Kentucky.
Oh yeah.
I think that we
very well.
I think we've moved back to paper ballots, and so that we have that receipt in there.
We now have the ability to actually audit.
Yes, yeah, exactly. We can actually go and actually see what people intended to write. And sometimes though,
if the Secretary of State will allow it to happen,
that's another subject. But and we can talk about that in a little bit. I don't want to put Susan on the spot here with that, with all that. So, but we can definitely talk about that, you and I, once Susan's finished up here. So, I don't know if Susan wants to stay in for that type of conversation.
Probably not. I probably should.
But
not.
I think that
I try not to get into those kind of in my position. I don't.
Yeah, I mean you shouldn't.
Right.
Right.
No.
You should, obviously make suggestions. If you think something needs to change, you make suggestions up to the Secretary of State and through the Board of Elections and things, and say, hey, there's maybe some risk here or there that we need to take care of. And I think that's, but that's about, that's given that feedback, and I think that they welcome that. But I think that one thing I like is the e-poll book. I think that has truly helped because one, it's helping us not just make it easier to do elections, but it's making our elections safer and removing some risk. Because now when you come in, you scan the back of your license, not just have somebody look up and say, "Oh, I'm Joe Bob from from Flaherty or Battletown or what have you," and then just trusting that that's happened. Now Kentucky's had a voter ID basically since I can remember. I don't remember not showing my ID, but I think the law at one time, and maybe it's still that way, is
If
that
the clerk recognized
if you were
they didn't
recognized
have
by
to
the
Yeah.
person,
ID you.
Right.
the sheriff or whoever, what's the person that's
Clerk.
the clerk?
Yeah.
The clerk can.
Accept you.
Accept you
Mm-hmm.
Let you
based
know.
on that because they know who you are. They're
Yeah.
they're part of the they know who you are because they know you from the community or whatever. And this is Meade County.
And voters need to also be prepared that when the clerk scans your license, they're also going to verify what what shows up on the e-public. Is this?
Oh, good. Yeah.
They're not gonna tell them like, okay, so your address is. They're gonna ask, what is your address, just to verify. Like it's a
Well, like when you
yeah.
call
Yeah.
into a doctor's office or any place that they, any
Yeah.
place where you're doing financial or important, where your ID is important. I this morning I had a call from a doctor's office, and I have sleep apnea, so I have a CPAP machine, and I just got a new machine. So they called me to verify. The first thing they did is verify my address. They know what it is, but I have to tell them what it is so they know that they're talking to me. And they ask me usually about 3 different questions to verify over the phone. But that's good. I mean, that's I feel they always apologize. Oh, I'm sorry I have to ask. Well, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that you do.
Right.
I'm glad that you verify these things because
it's a verification
yeah,
process.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So
And our clerks are, like all of my precinct workers are amazing, and I appreciate every one of them.
Fine Americans.
Yes.
Fine Americans.
Yes.
it takes. Kathy's done it for my wife. Kathy's done it for several years. I remember my son Tyler did it one year, and he was like, "No, I won't do that again." It takes a special patience, I
Yeah.
think, to do it,
And it's a long day.
and it is. I
Yeah.
mean, you're there
And then
basically
depending on the
5 a.m.
election,
on, right? I think
yeah.
basically.
Depending on the election, how busy you are, you may
12,
be,
13-hour day.
Yeah, you
Easy.
may just be like,
I mean, because I think Kathy goes in at 5 a.m. and then usually she's not finished up until
6:37.
7 because
Oh, yeah.
she's in a position where she takes it over to the
She's a
courthouse.
judge, yeah.
She's a judge,
Yeah.
so she takes it over to the courthouse.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, she'll correct me later, but you
Yeah.
probably know what she
Yeah.
is. I don't know. But
yes, and the judges do. They're the ones that bring back our all the bags that they have with the
right.
supplies and the USB
And-
that
and
we
the
have to
counts.
have, and
And most importantly, the counts, right? So, and the count comes in a paper form.
paper form, and then we have our USB that
As the
they have
backup
to,
or
that
what
they
have-
have
yeah.
to take out of the machine and bring to us to put in the computer.
And then
Yeah.
those things, do you all compare those two things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have a tape that's printed out, and then you have a USB. You validate that that's part of your certification process. So
Yeah.
So they take the
I remember-
USB from that machine and the tape
Yeah.
from that machine. They put it in. They see that the numbers are all the same. Then they've got to.
yeah.
They've got.
What if there's a difference? What is there? I'm assuming there's a protocol.
I've not been in that position. I don't know.
Well, that would mean there's some sort of
I'd say,
problem.
yeah.
That would
Yeah,
be,
I know
Well,
that.
I
Yeah,
mean-
there would be. There
be a shocking
I'm sure
problem because something would have to
Right.
be amiss.
Yeah, I mean,
say
if
the board as a whole would have to do a
because there were some questions last year about like a machine was down or a machine wouldn't tally at the end, and
I remember
a lot of
something
times
about
that's got something to do with
right.
a
And they ended up
procedure or
getting it
something.
all worked out.
They
but
did, yeah.
yeah. But I
I think it was
wasn't-
Akron. I think Akron
yeah,
precinct
it
actually was the
and-
one.
But
that
I
won.
wasn't a part of all that, so I don't know exactly what they.
Yeah,
did at
you can't answer the question
No.
because you couldn't
wasn't
you
allowed.
couldn't be a part of
No,
part of it last
no,
year. So
that's understandable. Yeah.
it is. I mean, I'm glad they do it that way because it just keeps integrity. You don't have to worry about anyone claiming that you did something nefarious.
Right.
You or Miss Arnold, who was also in the office, either one of you.
Integrity is
It's-
important,
Right.
but
It
so
is.
is the
Yeah.
perception of integrity.
That's right. Absolutely. That's I'm glad you said that, Joe.
You've got to have the
Yeah.
perception of integrity as well.
Yeah, because you have, it's like, people.
Something else our current Secretary of State needs to be taught.
Again, we'll have that conversation in a little while. So just keep holding those thoughts, Joe.
Lean forward. That's
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that we can talk about.
I would like to talk about dates of our early voting and.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's get into that a little bit because we have a whole another half an hour after this to get into the Joe's comments. So or Joe, the subject that are near to Joe. So go ahead and just run down the dates. When can we actually start voting? And one thing I'm also curious about is absentee ballots. Mail-ins. Mm-hmm. So, go ahead.
So our online portal opened on April 1st, where you can go online and request your ballot. And it closes on May 2nd. And then the absentee ballots, you can either mail them back to us, or we have a drop box in the hallway at the courthouse that they can be dropped in. And the absentee in office starts on May 3rd. So the mail-in stops on May 2nd, and in office starts on May 3rd. And that is when there's only certain reasons that you can vote absentee, which I have a whole list here that I was going to kind of, it's not a lot, but.
So is it reducing back down to some of the pre-COVID types of excuses rather than just being.
That is excused absentee voting. And that would be like if you're out of town, or you're going to be out of town on election day. You're having surgery. Let's see. Let me go over them because I want to make sure I don't miss any of them. They're going to be absent from the county of his or her residence on the day of the election and during the days of the no excuse in-person absentee voting, because we have the no excuse in-person absentee voting, which is starts May 11th through the 13th. So you would have to be absent from being able to early vote as well. Someone who temporarily resides out of the state but is eligible to vote in this state.
Steve's looking for you.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. Continue.
Is a resident of Kentucky who is a uniformed service voter as defined in the KRS, confined to a military base on election day during the days of the no excuse in-person absentee voting and election day.
This is all for mail-in, right?
Right, mail-in and in-office absentee.
Got it.
Someone who is in their last trimester of their pregnancy, and the voter completes the form. That's so there's that someone like that would have an extra form that they would need to get. Has not been declared or mentally disabled by a court or of competent jurisdiction, and due to age, disability, or illness is not able to appear at the polls on election day and during the days of no excuse in-person absentee voting. See, that's something that's different since we have the early voting now. In the past, before early voting, it was always just in-office or mail-in absentee day. But you
forgive me one second here.
Election day only, or now it's if you're going to be absent election day and your opportunity to early vote.
All right, we have a phone call here real quick. Let me see. Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
So, Susan, you're saying as long as I'm not drunk, I can show up to early vote and I can legally cast a ballot? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would hope so.
She doesn't exactly have a breathalyzer or anything for you to blow into before you take your ballot.
Well, I got to be of mental stability to make a vote, though, right?
Yeah.
So,
and
you are checking.
Not declared.
You are checking our driver's license, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then there's a couple other ones. Let me see. A student.
Now we got you for drunk driving?
No, we're not drunk driving.
Also, any student who temporarily resides out of the county of his or her residence. So you have your college students that if they can't come home for early voting and they're going to be at school on election day, so they can do it. They can request an absentee ballot, or if they're available to come into our office.
That certainly applies in November. I'm not sure about May, but it certainly applies in November.
Right. I know my son, who's in the Navy, he's over in Virginia, over in Norfolk. During the election last year, he told me that he got his ballot. He filled it out and he sent it in. But every time we checked the system, it never showed up as being.
I think I remember something about.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if he didn't maybe he was just telling me he sent it in or what, or maybe it came in late, or I don't know. But he had told me what day he sent it in, and I think I actually called up to ask a couple of different times if it came in. But so that worries me a little bit because you're at the mercy of there's a lot of people in between that mail in when you put it in the box and when it actually gets to your office.
Yeah.
And it goes to your office, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But the mail-in, I mean, they accept them all the way up to election day. So,
Right. Right. So it's
so, but you just kind of with the mail system, you want to make sure you get it in to where it's going to make it in time.
because you don't know. I mean, I'm not
Right.
nothing against the mail service. I mean, those are it's a
Right.
it's a good system. It's not perfect.
But
it relies on you doing your part as a citizen to put it into the mail. But you have to do, it's still a slow process.
delay.
And when you have all these people putting their ballots into the mail, now you have to worry about whether or not it's going to actually make it there because it's cluttered in with all of them.
So back to those were the dates of the mail-in absentee and the in-office absentee voting.
Just to go back over. So April 1st through May 2nd is when you can go online and actually request it, and then you can return it up till election day, whether that's drop it off in the office or you can take it and put it in the mailbox, and it just needs to return to your office by election day. Right. So make sure you get it out there, good, 5 to 7 days ahead of time, because, it takes time for it to get back depending on where you're from, where you're sitting.
And then we'll have in-office absentee voting from May 3rd to May 10th. So you can come into the office from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and vote. We'll have a machine that you can come. We'll have our EPO book and our Verity scan set up in our back room.
Now, is it kind of back to what it used to be, where it was I had to go in and sign the affidavit of why I need to vote early?
Right, you'll sign an application.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's in-person absentee vote,
right?
Essentially.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's
and then early voting, which I like this idea that they started, was from May 11th to May 13th. You can go to the fairgrounds at the Home and Garden building from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and vote early. And that's no excuse. Like, anybody can do that if they want. Like, if they just feel like they don't want to go on election day.
I don't mind the way we do it and do it here, where you basically have 3 days the week before. I'm not a big fan of voting early. I think that there's a reason that we should have a specific date that you go to the polls. But I don't mind the way we're doing it with 3 days, because if we wait until, other states were doing it, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And you know what, that basically says, okay, we're having an election, but we're going to cut you off 3 weeks. So election day is no longer in November; it's in early October.
Well, it becomes an election season,
right?
Yeah. Well,
election day.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that happen, and there's a lot of people who,
I think you lose something. You lose something.
When you talk about an election and you're a candidate, you're taught that most people do not make up their mind. 80-85% of people do not make up their mind until the last 2 weeks of an election cycle.
Right.
And then another percentage of that, and a big percentage of that, is the last week of the election. So if you, so what we open the door for is basically voter harvesting. I'm not talking about mail-in ballot harvesting. That's another subject. But you open the door for guilting, candidates trying to guilt somebody and going down and voting today, so it's marked in, and now they can't change their vote. Yeah. And once you vote, your vote's in. Now there's some states are allowing you to change your vote up to the election day. That creates a huge mess for everybody.
Possible. How is that possible?
I don't know, but there you can put in some sort of provision. They had some sort of provision that allows you to pull the ballot back based on the one you submitted.
If Susan was
I don't-
trying something like that, I'm just telling you, we had to go get her.
Yeah, I mean, no.
I ain't for
You
that.
can't
No,
do it.
I agree because there's
How
just
could
no
she
way
find
to,
your original ballot?
you
How
know.
is that possible?
Well, it's until they actually pull it and use it. It's numbered, right? You don't know.
No,
Yeah,
no.
that you scan the barcode on the outside of it. What's that?
But it's not associated to any.
It's not
No.
associated to your
like-
ballot.
Yeah. It's not
Your
like
ballot's
that-
not scanned. Like I cannot come in. There's no
In Kentucky,
way.
it's not. I don't know what it is anywhere else.
Oh no.
Well, what I'm saying.
We're only talking about. I'm not talking about in Kentucky because
Oh,
Kentucky
like-
we do it. I think we do it right, and you know we limit the election
I would never be
window.
able to like find your ballot.
No,
Like-
no, not the way
like,
we do it. We
no,
can't, and that's on purpose.
Well, I'm
No.
pretty sure that's everybody. I mean, if it's not, that's a really big problem.
Well, they have some.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that there were some stories going around in the last election cycle after the COVID that was talking about, well, you know, I wanted to change my ballot, and then there were provisions in some states that allowed for some things to change. That's what I remember that story. Now I don't have the particulars, so we can go back and look it up and see which one it is, and we can have that another conversation. But if I'm correct, and that did happen in some states, then we. You know, there's,
think that's
you know,
just
that's
wrong.
not, there's just no way you can, there's no way to do anything about
I
it.
would
There's-
love for it to happen, but I just don't see how you can design a
Right.
system. See, where I can't find out how you voted. Technically, that's a really big problem. See, if I'm the boss, I'm boss
Mm-hmm.
hog. So after the election's over, I come down with Susan. I say, I want to know how Mark voted. I know what he said,
Right.
but me and you gonna find out. I want to find his ballot. I'm gonna twist her arm until I can find your ballot. And I can verify who you voted for, who you didn't vote for. Now that is a big problem in our republic.
So you might as well twist my arm off because you.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. If it's possible to
Yeah.
to have leverage over people are humans,
Yeah.
and we want a system where that's not See, she right now she couldn't find your ballot to save her life. She couldn't.
No.
She couldn't find your ballot. It would be
No,
impossible.
I know we can't hear, and I don't know what the system was. I just remember there were stories about it, that they allowed for some sort of do-over, in some of these states. I don't know what it was or where it was. We'll look it up for another day, but because I don't have time to go look at it right this second. Unless,
Well,
unless,
I mean, I
unless
just want
Steve,
our
do you have your
listeners-
laptop out and you can look something up and see if
I
there's
want our
anything? But-
listeners to understand that that's not.
No.
That's not copacetic. Once you actually put your ballot in, when you scan it in that machine, it's over.
Yeah.
I don't care if you've got bad feelings about who you voted for or whatever. You know, I'm sorry. You're done.
Hey, Susan, I got a quick question. How many our voters do we still have on our rolls, or since you've taken office? I mean, it's still a lot of work every time to clean up our ballot rolls of people who are eligible to vote in the county. You know, I know the state's done a great effort to clean up the deceased voters,
Right.
but how much of that work has been done since you've taken office?
I do not have the numbers like in front of me to tell you. Like you're saying, like how many actual registered voters?
I mean, we had a
Well, we
nice
had-
drop last month because they
Do you
did
remember what they? I don't.
It was we were at 24,000. We went down to 22,000 and change. So it was something like
Actually, I do have
15.
numbers.
It's like 1,500 voters or something. I think were removed or something like that.
Yeah.
Or not
Yeah, it was
1,500.
1,452.
1,452. Yeah, yeah.
That was
that's
what
right.
was removed. So
From
our
this
total,
county.
yeah, total registered voters in March was 22,646.
Now, you don't just arbitrarily remove them. I mean, you'll go through a process. Could you describe what that's like?
I know that they removed them. I think majority was removed because they hadn't voted in like 2 federal elections. I think in over 8
Yeah.
years.
I think it was like it was
Yeah, like if they hadn't voted in 2 federal elections over 8 years, they were removed. Or that's the
well,
what
they
they've
were
heard.
sent
Or they were-
they
Yeah,
were sent a
right.
communication,
Right.
and then if they
Yeah.
didn't respond to the
Responded,
communication,
and then-
or if they communicated that they are indeed moved,
Yeah.
then they were removed.
Right. Yeah.
The deceased obviously were removed based on
Evidence
Which
that
we-
they're dead.
on records of
Yeah.
on death records and things like that. So.
Yeah, which we keep up with our removing our deceased pretty well, I think, in our office. But,
Yeah, I think it's the movers that they
yeah.
don't, they register somewhere else, but it doesn't. Now there's a database that was out there, but I think that we've participated, we haven't participated. It's kind of like a hard thing, I guess, to stay on. But there's a multi-state database out there that when somebody moves, it'll pop up over here and say, oh, they moved from Kentucky to Ohio,
Yeah.
let's say, and now it's like, oh, Kentucky needs to remove them from the voter rolls.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we're actually participating in that right now. But I thought there was some little bit of controversy over that over the
A lot of
last.
controversy over it.
No, I mean, it's got to be accurate. And that's the number one thing. I'm all for technology and things as long as we can prove that it's accurate.
Yeah.
But anyway, what else do you have for us on the election?
Well, let me see here.
So we talked about locations. We talked about dates.
Well, they are starting. So
How
this
many-
time,
what-
go ahead, Steve.
How many people do you think are going to turn out for this primary election, given the emphasis on the gubernatorial race?
I don't know, but I did get an email from some, I can't remember exactly where it came from, but they were expecting, they were not, to me, doesn't sound like a great turnout, but like 20-some%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I'm hoping for 30. But
I know.
if
Yeah.
we get to,
Yeah.
we're probably going to be happy if it gets to 25.
Right.
Now
I
the
think
good
it was-
news is on the Republican side, there's a lot going on with the governor's race and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Not so much on the Democrat side. I don't know. There's not. I haven't heard. I know there's a handful of Democrats running for statewide races, but I haven't heard much about them because there's just one.
yeah.
So there's not a primary, but there's primaries in almost every race for the Republican side. I don't know if anybody's running against Allison Ball. She's running for Allison Ball's running for auditor. Yeah, which I thought for sure she would run for
Governor.
Well, I thought she might run for attorney general actually, but I guess that she went over to she went for auditor. She was treasurer. And so there's a 3 or 4 person race for Republicans on the treasurer side. But governor's still got about 10, 12 people I think in there for it. So
Do you want those?
yeah, let me see. Thank you. I'm getting handed the sample ballot here. So
Vote. All the voters, they show up on May 16th, and ones that are in-person vote, on election day, they're going to be faced with the first thing they look at is going to be a poll. You saw
E-poll
e-polling book. So that's the first thing they sign in on. And do they actually
Electronic-
sign it like a little hand sign on the screen, or
It's an electronic e-poll book, like you know how like when you go to the pharmacy or something, you're signing.
Yep.
Yeah, but
so we give them
So-
a wand and they sign right there, and it just
Oh,
shows
yeah.
up on our digital book right there that they voted.
Right.
Okay.
yeah,
And then we also scan their identification. And okay, that sounds good.
yeah,
And then basically from there they get the ballot they're supposed to get, and they go to their little
ballot station.
cubby voting
Yeah.
ballot station.
And
I was gonna say cubby hole, but they go to their
Yeah.
ballot station, and then they mark their ballot correctly, and then they scan it and get their sticker and move out.
right, yep. And I did at the high school, since we had so much. It was suggested by one of my co-workers to have a little better signage of the direction they need to follow in that process. So I had some signs made that, especially for the high school, but I think I'm having it at the high school, Flaherty, and the middle school, and then we'll have some smaller ones at the other schools. But it actually tells you like this is check in here, pick up your ballot here, and then scan your ballot. So it's kind of we're trying to keep the flow, and so people aren't having to wait in line, and just trying to make it better for everybody. So
all right. So I was looking at because you handed me the sample ballot. So there are 3. There are 3 Democrats running for governor. So there's 2 others besides Andy Beshear, which is surprised me a little bit. I didn't realize that they had that. I don't believe it or not. I don't pay attention to the Democratic side until we get to the general. So and then there are 2 running for Commissioner of Agriculture. But if you look on the Republican ballot, so the Republican ballot shows Commissioner of Agriculture.
Heath
There's
and,
2. Heath and Shell.
Okay.
And then you have for state treasurer, you have Metcalf, Alika, and Cooper Ryder. Cooper Ryder, who was on our show last week. Interesting show that we had there. And Allison Ball does have, is that Derek Petties is running against Allison Ball for auditor. Secretary of State is Nipper, Miracle, and Michael, our current Secretary of State, Michael Adams. And there is 12 Republicans running for governor. We have our, speaking of that, we have our Lincoln Day dinner coming up on Tuesday. And
How did I forget that?
don't forget that. We were trying to get as many candidates as possible, but we've only had a few. We've actually only had one candidate that said that they're going to make it in person, but they're going to have surrogates from the others. Now, in all fairness, a lot of the governor's candidates, at least in the top part of the race, the ones that are kind of like in the top 4 or 5, came out for us in the and visited us in the Christmas party. So we had minus Kelly Craft, because Max Wise came and spoke for on her behalf at Christmas.
Do you care if I step out?
No. If you want to go ahead and you got anything else, Steve, before we let
no, I was
Susan?
gonna say thanks Susan for coming on the show. Sorry I couldn't be
you're
there
welcome.
in person. But
That's okay. Thank you.
Glad to get the word out.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well,
You're
thank you, Susan, so much for you coming out. I'll put the camera over on me so you can step out peacefully. And thank you so much for coming out and sharing with us. I'm sorry, you have any last
Anybody
words?
has any further questions with the election process, anything to do with their voting, they can call the office.
Do you have the number?
Yes, 422-2152.
422-2152.
And then we have our Facebook page too that they can message.
Awesome.
Yep. But any questions
Very
at all,
cool.
or we're there for them.
Awesome.
I have a great group of girls that are prepared
so
to
we,
answer any questions.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming and visiting with us. And, good luck on your first official election.
It's exciting.
It is.
It has been very exciting, actually.
And,
I've enjoyed it a lot so far.
Awesome. So I'm glad. I don't think we could have had a better person in the position. So we really appreciate all you do for the county as a whole. I know that you treat everyone the same, and I think that that's all we can ask for. So thank you, Susan, for coming out.
Thank
Susan
you all.
Masterson, everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. And let's see.
Hey Mark, I was gonna tell you.
Steve
I
would have
ran
the applause
into
line going on.
I know. Okay, I don't know where it is on this button. So Steve can
bottom
just
left button.
bottom left button. Oh, there it is. Oh,
For the pot. The queue
that's
is-
not it. You said bottom left button. It's not the bottom left button. You threw me a curveball there, Steve.
Zoom controller. Where the mics go in. Hey, just to let you know, I did run into Carson Parker from the Brett Guthrie. There it is. There it is.
Yeah. Okay, found it.
Hey, Parker is Brett Guthrie's rep for the area. I did let her know about the Lincoln Day and see if she would be interested in coming out for the Brett Guthrie camp, but haven't heard back from her.
Yeah,
And,
I talked to Brett. Brett actually called me a couple of weeks ago, or actually about three and a half weeks ago, and they were it was one of his team members. They called and tried to set something up, but they didn't realize that we had moved the date, and they have a major vote coming up on Tuesday, so he couldn't make it down. So we'll say a few words that I know he wanted to come out and be with us and such, and because Brett's always been a really great supporter of Meade County, and he comes out for us all the time.
I ran Carson Parker, she's the district area for him, and told her about it. She was at our AUSA event for the Army Reserve birthday earlier this week on Tuesday, and so she may try to come out. I'll reach out to her again to find out, but for the Lincoln Days. And then we actually have 2 remotes going on, Mark. We'll be live at the Lincoln Days and then Troy is doing his town hall on Monday
That's right.
night at the. I keep getting it wrong. I want to say the annex, but it's the what's that building for the extension office?
Extension
The
office,
Extension
yeah.
office.
Steve,
Old
we need-
Ekron Road.
when you're not going to be in studio, we need to get a picture of you so that we can put it up here and so we can have that with your
Oh, my
title
Lord.
underneath that.
We do FaceTime.
Well, we could have
FaceTime,
done that, but I mean, we're kind of like
Okay.
getting towards the end here. But I know that Joe is itching to talk about a couple things here.
Hey, I tell you what, you guys have a great evening. It's a great show. Close it out strong, and I will see you guys when I get back.
All right, thanks,
All right,
Steve.
big dog.
Safe
Have a good
travels.
one.
All right, let me see if I can have him. Yep, he's out. Yeah, I had the phone didn't vibrate, or if it did, it was vibrating on here, so I didn't hear Steve when he called the first time.
Heard
I think
something
when,
going on over when my phone was ringing.
somebody called on my other phone, but it wasn't Steve. It was my niece. I don't know what she wanted, but I had to go check it out. Oh, she left papers here. We'll have to get that back to her. She probably doesn't need them. But
Cheat sheet.
so let's talk about this a little bit. So, we've had a couple of folks come on, and we've talked to folks in the past about, we've had a couple of people come visit us and talk about.
Cooper Rider.
Well, no, it wasn't Cooper Rider. Actually, it was before him. It was one of the
Nipper?
it was Nipper's folks. Yeah,
Nipper's
so-
representative. Yeah.
Yeah,
I forget her name.
Yeah, it escapes me at the moment right now too, but I'd have to look it up. But it doesn't matter. So they were talking about, because I know Steve Nipper feels really passionate about this, and I realize that they have to differentiate themselves from the current administration if they want to win in the primary. So right now, Michael Adams is our current Secretary of State. There are a couple of folks running against Michael Adams, and in reality, I personally don't think that Michael Adams has done a bad job. I know that you have a couple of things that you feel that he should do better,
Should have done.
that he should have done or shouldn't have done in at least one instance. But I wanted to bring up one thing that says there was one thing that was brought up a couple weeks ago where somebody had mentioned about Wi-Fi at the polling stations. Well, why do we need Wi-Fi if the machines aren't connected to the internet? And they're not. So the machines are not connected to the internet. I didn't want to get into this with Susan but it is one of the things that we talked about.
Sure.
Because that's why they have to have the card. That's why they have the printout tape. They don't go over the internet. The machines are not connected. The actual things that tally the votes are not connected to the internet. But your e-poll books are. They are connected to the main database, so that when you go in and you sign in to vote, all the other e-poll books in Meade County know that you've already voted. So if you tried to vote in multiple locations, that catches you. There's no way to do that if you're not connected together through some network, right? So, so that's where technology on one hand is a good thing. There is a flip side where the technology on the backside.
Well, it's about perceptions. Let's get straight to the point. I mean, it's really about, if you are convinced that everybody running elections in not just Meade County, but in Kentucky or in the whole country are a bunch of crooks, then you're going to be more predisposed to believing that you're going to be more predisposed to believe that this whole thing's crooked. Since I've been involved personally in elections here in Meade County, I can assure you that's just not the case. I mean, if we have the e-polling book hooked up to the internet, that doesn't mean that any of the poll machines or any of the machines that count the counting machines that scan your ballot and tally the vote, that they're not hooked up to the internet. They're not.
They're not, and that's an important. But what I don't want is for people to hear these things and get afraid,
Right.
And get angry.
My vote doesn't count. It doesn't
right.
matter to
Now,
so the heck with it.
So I know there's one thing you've been itching to kind of talk about a little bit. We've talked about it in the past. is and I think this is as good an opportunity to talk about it as any. We have about because we only have about 6 minutes left in the show. We can kind of touch on it if you want.
I can only introduce myself in about 6 minutes.
Well, the good news is nobody needs to know. Everybody knows who you are. So you are Citizen Joe. Your reputation precedes you. So, but let's talk about this thing where Michael Adams, Secretary of State, there was some questions. There was at least one ballot last year where somebody wanted to do
in the primary.
In the primary, they wanted to have a recount,
hand recount,
because we have the ballots to go get them out of the machine. And Michael Adams chose to fight that all the way through court to make sure that they couldn't. Now we know that the election was not close, right?
Correct.
And his excuse, the reason he gave was that the election wasn't close, and that all it could do is call into question and besmirch the reputation or the election cycle or the election tools
process. Yeah,
the process. And so I understand where he's coming from to an extent.
Of course I do.
But at the same time, I think you've articulated this to me very well, that if he would have just done that and let the election cycle and prove that the election was not that it was on the up and up and the numbers were correct, then we wouldn't be having this conversation today. And but at the same time, if you let every election be counted, what would have happened if they not counted. They're all counted. Yeah, exactly. If they would have questioned every, if you go through a hand ballot and they run them back through, and now the number comes up one less vote. Right.
Which is likely.
It is likely because you're talking about marks on the paper. The light scanner is going to see it.
Yeah.
But you're not talking about something nefarious. You're talking about the fact that machines are machines, and they're not infallible.
Exactly.
They are going to have errors. So the question is that do you have errors? Enough errors? Are they errors, or what these people were calling into question was they thought that they were trying to put things out. Basically, they were trying to trump the election.
No.
Yeah, that's what they were doing.
They were suggesting that
there was something
nefarious wrong. No, they were suggesting out loud that there is nefarious forces behind the scenes that control these machines that can say, okay, I want the outcome to be this. So they could take a close election and make it a lopsided election if they wanted to. That's what they're saying. And so what my point is with Mr. Adams is that this was a beautiful opportunity, very, very simple.
That's what I said, though. I mean, these people are trying to trump the election. I'm not talking about
the election.
I'm not trying to Donald Trump. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about they're trying to say that there's something wrong with these voting with the voting system.
Well, yeah, but they're saying there's not something wrong with it. They're saying there's something that's fundamentally
crooked,
corrupt. That our leaders they're all chosen for us. We don't choose our leaders.
But you can say that about any You can try to say that about any election.
Well, I'm saying to you that they do say that about any election, and so in the meantime, they're encouraging people from a civics perspective to not vote because your vote doesn't matter. Mark, why would you spend the time doing that? Just go out there and throw rocks instead. I mean, that's sort of kind of what happens in these situations. I mean, we're creating a radicalism. And what I'm saying, fundamentally, what Michael Adams did was he denied us our first.
So go through what he did real quick. Just go ahead and kind of like rehash a little bit what happened and what the whole.
He signed on to a lawsuit to prevent the recount, and it was very unusual that the Secretary of State would get involved in this because these were local elections. So a candidate. Joe Rebbins running against Mark Burnett, and so.
But where was this at? This was in
near little Oldham County, I think. Oldham County. It was up northern. Uh-huh. It was the speaker's race. The speaker's
Osborne.
Osborne was in a race, I think it was more than just one race. There was 2 or 3, I think. Osborne of them was one of them. So Osborne won his primary. Like I want to say it was 65-35. For some reason that was the number that was in
Yeah, big number.
percentage. 65-35 is not a close election.
It's not.
I mean, it's a landslide. And so, but the thing was that the person with the 35 was suggesting that there was something fishy about all the numbers, and so they wanted a hand recount of the ballots. And I believe, I'm not positive, but I think statewide, either this last election or the one before that was the first time you could actually do that. We had so many electronic machines still out there across the state.
Yep.
But I think it was just recently that we've eliminated all those.
Last election was, I think, the first
now-
time that we had paper ballots across the board.
There's a paper ballot for every vote has a piece of paper that a human being can look at and say they voted for Mark or they voted for Joe. And so they can go through every one of them. It takes time. It takes, we pay people, volunteers. They're not volunteers. They get $100 a day.
No, because you're not talking about those people coming in and doing the can count.
Well, they would
It
do
would be
well, it's
the election board.
unclear.
It would,
The election board would have
the
to be
election
part of
board.
it. They would
There's a
oversee it.
process.
Yeah.
We went through this with the recounts before, so there's a process for
They
that.
have a process in place.
They call the chairs of the parties in. Now this case was just Republicans, so it's a primary, so they'd probably just call in the chair of the Republican Party. They would call for the county. They would call in the candidates and their representatives.
Right.
They would all look at. They would all be part of this as they went through that.
Each ballot.
Each
One
ballot.
by one.
And you're talking about up in Oldham County, you're talking about thousands upon thousands of ballots.
Well, it would probably take many, many hours. So you're looking at, 3 or 4 days, something like that. The point is, it's very doable. It's very doable.
It is.
Now, the legislature, when the legislature wrote the law, okay, the legislators write law. That's what they do. They didn't say that it had to be a close election. Once they said that what the law says is that, hey, look, if Mark pays for it, Mark gets a recount, a hand recount. That's what the law says. But basically, the Secretary of State and as judge, they decided, well, the hell with that. We don't need to recount that. It stipulates that if it's within a certain, I don't know if it's 0.5%, 2/3%, 1%.
It must happen.
It must happen then.
Yeah.
And so they've interpreted this to basically say, yeah, but if it's a 65-35, that's a 30% spread. So so how could the recount help this situation? Well, the recount, what the hand recount does is it verifies that our elections are valid, that they're meaningful, that they're actually real. And so to me, this is our Secretary of State participated in an effort to deny us this. And that it perturbs me. I mean, because obviously, now listen, I want to make sure you understand about this. Michael Adams, I've got nothing for or against him. But if he had stayed out of this and we'd had the recount, and even if it was 1 or 2 off, I don't care. The point is that I would have no Steve Nipper, Alan Merkel. They wouldn't have any traction with me personally to vote against the Secretary of State. But right now, I can't vote for the Secretary of State. I mean, he did the most fundamental thing wrong in my perspective. Most fundamental. We have to protect our civics. The perception of our elections should not be in question. And to me, by denying the hand recount in those, I don't know how many races it was. It was 2 or 3. I know the speaker's race was one of them. And that, to me, that is just wrong. It's just I can't square that circle. That's a.
I mean, you and I had this conversation, and you know how I feel that yes, I agree. He should have done that. I just don't think that it's to the point of I can't support him. I can't vote for him or anything like that. And I don't want to get into that because I don't want us to go on this show and say, oh, this is who we're voting for or anything like that. We're not on that because we have we have some level of influence over other people, and I want to make sure that we keep ourselves as party leaders, keep ourselves above that. But still, I think it's a good conversation to have because what happens is we disagree with what happened.
Right.
So I think we both we have different extremes. We're not at the same extreme, or we're not at the same level of disgust over it.
Right.
But the one thing that you and I can agree on is that when it happened, I wish it didn't. I wish it would have went ahead and did the recount. But at the same time, I do see why we shouldn't. Why there's a good reason not to. And the good reason is, the only reason that I have that not to is only because
There's no good reason.
there is, because there's not there's a certain select number in the population that if they see any difference, it now opens a door in their mind, and that creates I don't want to say hatred, but it creates a definite distrust in the system. If they see any difference, it's like, well, wait a minute, there was 3.
Well, yeah, but
there's
that's a system functioning. I mean, obviously, if we can't explain that, then we can't explain anything.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of being 1,427 to 298, it's 1,429 to 296. Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, there was 2 votes that were miscounted. In the wrong
miscounted.
direction, by the way.
Well, yeah, either miscounted or they were.
We can show you the ballot. Take a picture of the ballot, put that on Facebook. The machine miscounted. It should have miscounted that ballot because it was poorly marked. Now, as the election commission got together, they decided we could determine who this person was voting for.
I would say that if there's
not.
2 marks, I would say this: the rule of thumb has to be if there's any mark in any of the boxes, in multiple boxes on the same race. So we have 12 governors.
Well, if that was
if
the
2
case,
of those are marked, I don't care if it's just a single line through it.
right? How could you determine which one is the right valid one?
You couldn't.
Well, you can't. My point is that it's possible.
But some people will try.
Well, no. Yeah, but what I'm saying is, as the election commission looks at a ballot, they could sit there and say, well, this one had the man's name circled. Then there was no other vote on there. Okay. So the election commission can vote on that and say, well, we believe they voted for Mark. They circled Mark's name. But they did it wrong. They did it incorrectly. No, they may not. They may decide, hey, look, that's
I'm just saying I would disagree with that. It says exactly how to vote. And if you went down here and you circled all the people,
my point is,
I know your point. Yeah,
that's how the ballot counter is not going to count that ballot. Okay.
Yeah. It's an error.
The people who do a hand recount can count that ballot if they wish.
Can't.
Well, they could. They could say, well, that voter.
Or I said they shouldn't.
Well, that shouldn't is a better word, because that I think you can make that case that it shouldn't. My point is that they can. They can, if they have a clear determination where they think who Mark voted for, boom, they should count that as a vote. Now, if they can't make a clear determination who Mark voted for, they shouldn't, of course.
But you're going to take a ballot past me. I'm going to look at it and say, yep, I see who they voted for. I'm going to hand it to you, and you're going to say, I can't determine.
Well,
who's right?
Well, you vote.
No.
There's going to be 3 people. There's always a way to vote, okay?
I know, but now you're voting on votes.
Well, no. That's why we have a Secretary of State. It wouldn't be a Secretary of State now. It'd be a county clerk in that situation.
Yeah.
Who would be the 3rd vote? The actual elected clerk, whichever part of that
it's the election or
the sheriff, one or the other. I don't know.
It's the election.
Each county has an election.
What's the commission? Yeah, the election board.
Right.
So
There's
is
one Democrat,
one Republican, and the county clerk and the sheriff. I think there's 5 total, but I can't
sheriff
remember.
is like a non-voter or something. So
he's there definitely as an observer for sure, but he kind of keep the peace.
Exactly. So I think that's the reason why he's there, but I'm not positive about any of that. I just know that there is a vote. Mm-hmm. There is a way for us to determine. There's not a tie vote. No kissing your sister or anything like that. This is the deal. Okay, somebody's going to win that vote, and somebody's going to lose that vote.
So I want to talk. I know we're way over on time tonight, so everybody, thank you for staying with us. But I wanted to have this conversation, I wanted to wait till Susan was finished. So
it's that perception issue that.
Well, let's talk about alternate solutions. If they would have counted the votes, right? If they would have counted the votes,
recounted.
If they would have recounted the votes,
right?
I'm sorry. Thanks for correcting me. If they would have recounted those votes up in Oldham County, then you would have had it would have been a test of the system.
Exactly.
And that's where you and I agree. We agree that testing the system is not a bad thing. And I think that's where you're coming from. But I think a good solution would be that we need to have something in our legislation or something somewhere that says that they will have the auditor's office audit an election.
I think you're exactly on the right line.
Right? I mean, so
1% of all elections in Kentucky.
well, I mean, I don't want to put a number on it because I don't have a good number for what it would take, but just
It would
a
cost
random, a complete random sampling of machines
Right.
from different precincts throughout the state,
Right.
and do something at every election cycle where something is going to be popped up. If you have an area that's considered to be somewhat, somewhat of a, maybe a problem. I mean, I can't remember the name of the county that they claim over in Eastern Kentucky where they say that, every election's been rigged since the beginning of time or whatever. And, that's a real thing that they say over there, but it's like, I see how we run our elections and they're supposed to have the same machines and things. Right. So I don't see how it can be. I don't see how it can be elected.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I guess, there can be corruption everywhere and everything if you want it to be, but,
I agree with you that Nancy Tate, if you're out there, this is a great issue for the next legislative session, is that you need to alter this law to require, and probably the auditor is the proper person for this, not the Secretary of State, but probably the auditor that will come in and pick out one House race per every 2 years and do a hand recount. And just do a hand recount just to verify the system works. Pick it out by random, It doesn't have to be local.
well, I mean, there's ways to do it without getting into hand
We
recounts.
also need to clarify in the law that Mark, if Mark pays for the hand recount, he gets the hand recount.
I think that there needs to be some where I disagree on that. The only thing I agree, but at the same time, I think there has to be some limiting factors. If you're within 10 points, or if you're within,
Wait a minute.
Well, I mean, come on.
10 points is outrageous. You're a way big loser. 10 points is
I know,
is
but
a
I mean,
huge
I'm
number
just
to
saying
overcome.
that we have to have a line
no
somewhere.
Computer era is going to come up with 10 points. Okay.
I mean, because
a computer era might come up with maybe half a dozen ballots or something like that. Maybe.
And most
out
of those are going to be
1,000.
because something was
It won't be
extra
error.
marked or
right, exactly. No,
Yeah.
because the ballot was marked incorrectly.
But let me say this:
voter
'cause
error.
I think
okay?
I think most of the time it's going to be voting error. But let me say it like this: so I think what we can do is we can take you don't have to even do hand recounts right away, right? You can actually take and have certified, validated machines, right, at the auditor's office where they take the ballots and. Or they bring the machine with them or whatever, because they're all made to be mobile. Take the machine, take their certified machine with them, put the ballots to it, and count it. Right? Count the ballots. Let's see.
You use a different counter.
A different machine.
count.
Now,
Yeah.
if that machine comes up within 5 votes of the same being the same, you call it good, or whatever the number needs to be.
Some percentage.
Percentage.
Point whatever percent. Right.
Exactly. And so you don't even have to go into hand recounts. Now, if you get something that's off by more than a percentage, a decent percentage point off, now you go to the hand and say, okay, well, what's going on here? Because then we need to know.
But this is all, like I said, I keep coming back to the same thing. It's about perception. And now the crazies out there, okay, I see them on Facebook.
But the crazies out there
I debate with
before.
them on Facebook. I debate these people on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. And like I said, this really comes down to, we had this golden opportunity to put this issue to bed. We're going to use your money, crazy. Okay. We're going to use your money to put this issue to bed. Instead, we have this appearance. I do not, in my wildest dream, I'm not saying that Michael Adams is trying to cheat elections in Kentucky. That's bull crap. I don't believe that. I mean, you try to make that case, Steve Nipper or whoever else. Steve Nipper's not saying that publicly. Steve Nipper's just saying, saying basically what I'm saying, that we should make our system much more open and it needs to be something that everyone can verify. Everyone can walk up and see, you know what, I saw that. That's exactly, good to go, good to go. And so everybody has confidence, a higher level of confidence. We left on the table, that judge, and it wasn't just the Secretary of State, but the judge involved. They left a very good opportunity to basically demonstrate the efficacy of our elections processes on the table, and they didn't. And now, now why did they do that? Well, you could say that it's for the stated reason, sure, but you can also say that these guys just didn't want. They didn't want to open that ballot box. They didn't want to count them ballots. If they counted them damn ballots, they would have found out. The speaker loses. The speaker don't want to lose his race in the primary. And what I'm saying to you is that I've seen speakers lose races in primaries before. It's happened in the past. Not just speakers in Kentucky. I'm talking U.S. House of Representatives, Speaker of the House.
Osborne's predecessor lost.
Yes, he did.
Lost in the primary, I think. Didn't he lose in the primary?
I'm trying to remember. You're talking about,
or did he just lose in the general? I think he just lost in the general. Nobody ran against him in the primary.
Talking about Grady Stumbo over there.
Yeah, Greg.
I always call him Grady, mocking him. He's about now. He wasn't crooked. He was just. I just think he was just someone who was so focused on getting something his way done. He was single-minded about it and he used every means at his disposal. And some of them might have been not quite on the up and up. Some of his means that he used. So, but like I said, hey, look, at the end of the day, you're a winner or you're a loser. You go home and talk about it. Go home, get on Facebook and complain about it. Okay?
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is that this was about perception. And that's the reason why I will invest my vote the way I told you I will.
So, just to catch everybody up and kind of like put a pin in this for a little bit, elections are important, and perception of those elections goes a long way. I don't know that we have. I don't think we have a horrible system at all. I think Kentucky does a really good job with our processes and the people that are doing them are running these elections. I think they do a really, really good job. They're unsung heroes. People like Susan Masterson, Judy Jordan before her. Katrina Fitzgerald before her.
Yes.
I think these are all people I think that ran on elections at least here locally in Meade County with integrity and because Katrina she was the county clerk over the one vote sheriff's race.
That is absolutely correct. And the Republican won that. She was a Democrat. And the Republican won that.
So you have to give the credit where the credit is due, and I think that when it comes down to it, I think that they've all done a fabulous job. But I just want to make sure that you guys, that everybody realizes that, hey, we have our Lincoln Day dinner coming up Tuesday. Where there are still tickets available. We have Daniel Cameron is scheduled to be there with us, as well as
Mark Burnett, our chairman. He'll be there. You come out and meet Mark.
Yeah. Then you
Nancy
have
Tate. She's a rock star. You come out.
Yeah,
and be a
Nancy.
rock star.
So Nancy's going to speak. Steve Meredith is going to speak.
Senator Meredith.
Daniel Cameron is going to speak, as well as some surrogates for some of the others. So come out and listen to what they have to say. Ask questions. We will put this out on the podcast. Don't forget that Monday night is the 4th district town hall meeting. I'm not sure where that's going to be.
Meade County Extension Office.
It's going to be the Extension Office.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it's going to be Monday night at, I think, 6:30. I think it's 6:30 p.m.
I wasn't sure of the time. That's why I'm saying.
If you want to make sure get there at 6 just to be sure. But I'm pretty sure it's like at 6:30. But if you have any questions about that, you can always give a call to Troy Koch's office, and they'll set you right on the right path. So, but thank you all for listening in. Thank you all for your attention. I know we have we went over tonight, but I think we had a really good discussion, and I thank Joe for coming in, and Susan, if you're listening out there, thanks for coming and giving us some the scoop on the upcoming election. So
another rock star. She's going to be.
She's really a woman of integrity, a county clerk of integrity. So thank you all, and have a good night.